Hi everyone, this is Selvi. Today's topic is dependency management. Before getting into the topic of how to manage dependencies, let's try to understand what is dependency. Let's consider two tasks. Okay, there are two tasks that we need to perform. When we say one task is dependent on another, when there is a relation between these two tasks, one task is related to another. That is the first condition. Second condition is one task needs to be completed so that the other can start. The closure status of one task is very important for the other task to initiate. That means order of execution is very important. So when two tasks are considered as dependent work items, means they are related and one of the tasks should be completed well in advance so that the other can start, which means the execution order need to be taken care. That is dependency. In simple terms, let's go with an example from our day-to-day life so that it is very easy to understand dependency and what are its varieties, and we will talk about the management as well. I invited my friend for lunch. My plan is actually when I was looking for this lunch plan, I thought I will make some rice recipe. So when I was thinking about this, okay, I'm going to make this rice recipe, I remembered that I need to purchase rice for this recipe, of course. So there is a dependency for me. If rice is there, means only I can prepare this recipe. Second thing is, so this is while making a note, okay, I'm planning for the lunch on Sunday and I'm thinking about what are the items. So I decided like, okay, rice is one item and I know that there is a dependency also. I forgot to purchase the rice, and after a day, actually, as a family, we are sitting and discussing, okay, what are the items that we are planning for the lunch that is on coming Sunday. Then again, this topic, oh, yeah, rice is not there at home. We need to purchase rice. This dependency is again getting discussed, and other items like what are the other things that we are going to make. So there was one more item that we were looking for is like in the same rice recipe, I want to add some spices. So actually, one of my other friend, she is traveling from a different place where these spices are very famous. So I really want to use that to prepare my recipe in a very wonderful way. So this is one another dependency. Not only rice, now I am looking for some spices as well. So I need to connect with my friend. One is I need to go to the shop and purchase the rice. Second one is I need to talk to my friend to get these spices. So now these two dependencies, I actually forgot both of these things. And the day also came on the day where we actually plan for the lunch. Sunday morning, I am all set to prepare the things for lunch. That was the time I remembered, oh my god, rice is not there at home, and I immediately went to the shop and purchased the rice. But what happened with my spices is like I was unable to talk to my friend because already she started from the place where she's supposed to get those spices. So I cannot take support from her now. So I got spices from my shop, which is close to my home. What is the situation here? Somehow I prepared the lunch, I served the lunch to my friends. But what is the situation here is the very first day when I thought about this lunch plan, and I know that I'm going to prepare some rice recipe, that moment itself I remembered that rice is not available at home. I need to purchase. I missed that. That is point number one. After a day, I was discussing with my family again the topic of what are the recipes that we are going to make. That time also the dependency part came into picture. That time also I missed. Even I missed the rice dependency also. I missed the spices dependency also. And on the day of real execution, I realized that these dependencies are not fulfilled. Now I am in real trouble. Now let's go to our project execution. Same things happen, exactly same things. If you remember this incident, you will be able to correlate. Now let's try to correlate with our actual execution, how it happens. The first thing is the place where we will be able to capture the dependencies are when the author of the work item is trying to prepare the work item. When I say author, it can be a product owner, it can be your architect, it can be your technical lead, because user stories can be written by any of these people. But generally what we will do, just to align through one channel, we always look for product owner to write our user stories. But actually speaking, technical lead also can write technical stories, even architect also can write technical stories. So it is possible. That's why I mentioned the word author. When author is, let's take product owner. When product owner is creating the user story, he or she knows that, okay, there is a dependency. What is a dependency? For example, it's related to a let's take a very simple example of login page, the user story related to login functionality. But there is no wireframe, there is no UI UX design at all. Now, even though you write in acceptance criteria, login should accept 12 characters, username should accept 12 characters, password should be case sensitive, and it should accept these password combination. But you cannot visually see how it is going to look like, whether it is going to be aligned horizontally or it is going to be aligned vertically in the page, because there is no UI UX wireframe at all. So when writing this user story itself, product owner knows that there is a dependency. Let's take in my scenario, when I was thinking about the recipe of rice, vegetable rice recipe, I know that rice is not available at home. I know that there is a dependency to purchase the rice, otherwise I cannot make vegetable rice. I missed it. Same way, product owner also missed it. Like, product owner who knows that there is a missing wireframe in the user story, but okay, fine. What will happen next? If we are not tracking that dependency, or if we are not identifying the dependency and perfectly track it for closure, what will happen on the refinement day, on the backlog refinement day, this user story, we are picking it up for refinement. Team is asking, where is the UI UX wireframe? We cannot understand anything, because if it is a login page, it can be very simple. Let's consider it's a catalog, product catalog creation, where some pop-up is coming in between, where you have different dialogues coming in between. How can I really visualize it now? Acceptance criteria is giving everything, but I need to have some wireframes or UI UX designs so that I'll be able to understand how it looks like. Now I cannot understand that. That is one of the dependencies. So if we really identified the dependency at the day when we are writing the user story, yes, we did, but we have not tracked it, we have not taken it for closure. So where it have reached, it reached to the level of backlog refinement. Still the dependency is open. Same way, on the day when I was looking for the recipe and I'm thinking what I need to make, I know that there is a dependency with rice, but still I missed it. Next day, when as a family we were discussing about all the other recipes, that time also this topic came up. That time also this dependency of rice was discussed. Then also I was not taking care of that dependency. So what happened? On the day of execution, I got into trouble. Similar way, product owner is telling, don't worry, even if UI UX wireframe is not available, I am going to just draw the layout, how it is going to look like. Let's consider that as the design and let's estimate it. Let's not wait for that actually. Okay, team also finally, okay, fine, you are giving that confidence. So we realize that this is how the screen is going to look like. And based on that understanding, we are going to estimate it. Estimation is also done. Now we are in a situation to start our sprint, but still UI UX wireframe is not available. See the situation, the dependency is not handled during the story creation, dependency was not handled during the refinement session. Now we are in the actual execution where still the dependency is open. Now this is no more a dependency, it is a blocker. Because the story is of high priority, but how team is going to work? Because team cannot basically work with that understanding how product owner have drawn the layout. It cannot be taken as a design, right? We need to have a design. We need to have the UI UX prototype or designs from the designer, so that that will be considered for our development. Now we are in a situation of a blocker. So this is how the dependency will change to a blocker or complete impediment or a showstopper, and it will stop our complete execution. So the catch here is, whenever a dependency is identified, we need to manage it very, very properly. If we are not managing it properly, it will eventually turn as a risk. What is a risk? Risk is something it may or may not happen. Initially, it was a dependency. It was just a dependency. If we can resolve the dependency, there is no harm at all. But if we are missing that, eventually it will turn into a risk, which may or may not create issue for us. But what will happen if we are not taking care that time also? Then actual execution time, it will become a blocker. If I would have handled my vegetable rice preparation, there is a dependency with rice, I would have gone and purchased the rice, there was no issue. If I would have, at least on the next day when we were discussing, I would have gone and purchased, there was no issue. But what happened, actually on the day of execution, on the day of preparation, I was struggling to get rice from the shop because I was blocked completely. This is the same situation happening in our project execution also. In story creation time, we would have handled it. No, we identified it, but we have not handled it. During refinement session, again we discussed about it, but we have not handled it. So what it eventually turned into as blocker. So now we understood the importance of dependency. Fair enough. But how to handle it now? That is very important. Okay, identifying dependency is okay. We know that at different levels we are able to identify. But what we should do so that we will not get into this kind of situation? It is very simple. We need to handle it. But for handling, we need to follow a process. Why process is required? So that we will know that these are the dependencies, these are the things we need to cover. Then we will not get into any risk stage where that risk, if it is getting realized, we may get into a blocker state. So at least we need to be free from this situation. To ensure that we are going to be free from this situation, we need to handle dependencies properly. Okay, now let's understand that process. Identification of dependencies is the first thing. The process consists of 3 steps. One is identification of dependencies. Second one is identifying action owners and coming up with action plan. Third one is tracking the action plan. These are the 3 steps we need to consider and we need to follow to manage and handle dependencies. First thing is identifying dependencies. As I mentioned, at every level, we have the opportunity to identify dependencies. Some dependencies, they are very much visible at the very beginning when we are writing the user story, or when we are discussing the user story, or when we are even thinking about there is one user story that we are going to plan. That time itself, we will be able to identify that there are dependencies. But in certain situations, we cannot identify the dependencies at the very early stage. During refinement, we will be able to understand. When we are discussing, for example, certain AWS instance should be available. We don't have that today. So what we need to do? Product owner is looking for some kind of performance test to be actually taken care as part of the acceptance criteria. There is a non-functional requirement specified, but we don't have that setup available. We need to set up an AWS instance, we need to bring up certain things, we need to set the environment, we need to create so many users, then only we will be able to perform that NFR. So now, these are situations where you cannot on day one may be able to find the dependency, but on the refinement time you can find the dependency. So dependencies we can identify at any time, but earlier we identify the dependencies, it is good for the team and for the tracking mechanism, so that we will have a smooth execution. So now we identify the dependencies on the very first day or during the refinement. Sometime we are identifying the dependencies. Okay, that is first step is done. What is the second step? Second step is identification is not the only job. In this identification, what are we going to do? How are we going to handle it? For example, if UI UX wireframes are not there, designer is the action owner. So we need to identify who is the action owner. Necessarily, not always Scrum Master or product owner will be the action owners. It can be your designer, it can be your architect, it can be your team lead, it can be your tester. Any person can be the owners. But identification of action owner is very important, because they should know that there is a dependency. Knowing alone is also not going to help. You need to give a date. Always specify a date when we want this dependency to be resolved, so that we can perform the actual implementation or the actual work. So here we need to identify the action owner and we need to identify the action plan. What should be performed by the person, by when. That is the second step. So first we have identified the dependencies. Second, we have identified the action owners and what should be performed, that is action plan with date, closure date. So now we know that this is going to be taken care. But this action plan work is not the only work that the action owner is going to do. They may have other work also to do. But now as a Scrum Master, we need to track it. So the best way of tracking is always have some placeholder in your sprint backlog to manage these dependencies and track these dependencies. So put it in your board so that you can ask like, okay, hey, what is happening with this dependency? And if Scrum Master itself is owning, yeah, I'm working on this dependency, I'm looking for this resolution, I'm talking to this so-and-so team, and we will be getting back this information, or we are blocked, you can give that status. You can share that information at the end of your stand-up. What is happening with the dependencies, what we are working now. Similarly, it can be shared to anyone, like whoever working as action owners, they can share the updates about that particular dependency after the stand-up discussion. So in that way, we are tracking it. So these steps should be followed. Very, very important. Identification of dependencies, it can happen at any time. But if we miss to identify or if we are missing to handle it, it will eventually turn into a risk and definitely it will get into a blocker state. So identification of dependencies, identification of action owner with action plan, and have an action closure date. Third one is track it. The best way of tracking is always add those dependencies what as a team that we are working on the board, so that we will be able to track it properly. Now this is good, how we can manage the dependencies. I want to talk about only one last thing before we close this episode. There are two things to manage in dependencies. One is inter-dependencies, intra-dependencies. Intra-dependency. Now let's go back to the example whatever I have shared. Vegetable rice recipe preparation. Rice is one dependency. Purchasing rice is one dependency, which is completely dependent on me. I can go to the nearby shop and I can purchase rice. That's it. I no need to depend on anyone else. This is an example of intra-dependency, where I am not actually dependent on someone else. It's completely owned by me. Whereas I am looking for spices, purchase of spices from a specific place, that is going to happen by my friend. So here I cannot be the action owner. I have identified the dependency, I have assigned that action plan to her, and by so and so date and time you need to bring those spices to me. Everything I have shared, I'm tracking. But it is an interdependency, which actually it is between me and my friend. We need to ensure that she is resolving the dependency. It is dependent on a third party person. So why I am putting this point now is, than intra-dependencies, interdependencies should give more weightage. Why? Because you are connecting with the third person, or you are connecting with a different team. When, because they have their own plan. My friend has her own plan, right? She would have planned already some weekend trip or something, and she may say that, no, Sylvia, I'm not traveling to your place, I cannot bring you these spices because I have a different plan. So now everything is changed. But if it is with me, I know what is my plan. I can go to my shop and purchase the rice because it's with me. So the risk, if it is intra-dependency, the risk is slightly less. If it is interdependency, the risk is slightly more. So we need to give more weightage, and we need to really track with extra additional stuff. What is that extra additional stuff? You can add some buffer, or you can identify one more action owner. If in case this action owner is not available, then who is the next person I can connect with to resolve the dependency? For example, if this friend cannot purchase those spices for me, who else I can check with? Who is my second point of contact so that I can take support from? Similar way, always in interdependencies, when you identified that dependency and you know that very well it is out of your boundary and you have a dependency with another team, always look for not only one option, have alternate option. Because it is not your team, you don't know that what are their priorities, and you don't know what are the challenges they have. So always have some alternate plan in that case, because the risk that is involved in interdependencies are more, as it is a different team. Whereas in intra-dependency, it is slightly less because you have the control. You can daily check with the people and you will be able to manage it. But whereas with other team, it is slightly a challenge. So always have an alternate option. I think we have covered. So in a nutshell, I'm just trying to summarize few points. So first we have understood what is a dependency and how to manage dependencies. If we are not managing dependency, the challenge what we will be facing, we will get into a risk phase and finally it will become a blocker. So the best thing is to follow a process to handle dependencies by identifying the dependencies, identify action owners, action plan with closure date, and third one is track the dependencies. And what is all about interdependencies and intra-dependencies. These all things we have covered with examples. Hopefully this episode would have helped many of you in understanding dependency. Thanks everyone for listening. Happy learning and stay tuned.